gossips do destroy friendships. Sometimes it's better to just cut off a relationship than to keep pursuing a relationship where you know you're gonna hold bitterness. That's my hot take, is that literally ranting will get you nowhere, even if you feel like you want to and you need to and it'll help. It probably won't. Don't wait to address the conflict and you end up just stirring and stewing in your anger. Hello and welcome to the Living Life for Real podcast. I'm your host, Evelyn Byers, and I'm so excited that you are able to join me today. For those of you that are watching, you can see that I changed my curtains a little bit in the background, which I was really excited about. Maybe you didn't notice. They weren't that different. The curtains, they were just they were like gray and cream, but they were kind of ugly and they had a pattern on them. And I was just ready to change them. I wanted them to look a little bit more aesthetic for the podcast. Because I recorded my camper. That's just a random fact. Well, it's my parents' camper, but they aren't really using it. They used to actually rent it out for people as an Airbnb. But they haven't been doing that for probably at least 6 months, and they just stopped. So I've been using it to record for the podcast. So that's been pretty nice. But yeah, I decided to change up the curtains a little bit to make them just a little bit more plain, because I'm actually going to get some new pillows soon too. That'll be kind of fun, and it'll change up the vibe a little bit, because I'm just using all the stuff we already had in the camper. But I'm ready for some changes, ready to personalize it a little bit for the podcast, which I'm really excited about. I'm also really excited for today's topic, because we're going to be talking about how to handle conflicts in a godly way. And this is something that I feel like everybody struggles with to an extent, whether they avoid conflicts, and so then they're not having the conversations that they should when they need to confront someone. And then there's some people that are a little bit too excited for confrontation. They kind of just go at those hard conversations, and they don't really have godly wisdom in the way they approach it. They don't really seek peace. They're seeking the conversation. And so both sides of the coin have their own pros and cons. It's not good to just avoid conflict, but it's also not good to just force a conversation when it doesn't need to happen. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about both of those today. And we'll start off actually with a verse. So the first verse I have is Proverbs 16:28. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. Now, I don't know about you, but when I actually read this verse, I actually was like, what does perverse actually mean? I've heard it, and I kind of know the general idea of what it means, but I actually Googled it because I wasn't exactly sure what it means. But it kind of basically just means a person who just stirs up trouble for no reason. They kind of do the opposite of what they're supposed to. They kind of just act out just for the sake of acting out. I don't know. That's at least kind of what I was reading. When I was looking at the definition, that's kind of my own summary of the definition. So I'm going to read that verse again. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. And I think that that's just a really interesting verse, because it's talking about someone who's intentionally just stirring up trouble. They're just going to make more trouble. And a person who's gossiping, that's what's going to separate close friends. And I think so many people do this. Everybody's gossiped at some point in their life. I know I have. And I've seen that lived out in my life when I'm talking about somebody else, and then it gets back to them, and then that's kind of tears down that friendship. Or the reverse, I hear about other people talking about me, and then I'm like, okay, well, now I can't trust you anymore because you're talking about me to somebody else. And I think that's just so true. Gossips do destroy friendships. If you're a gossip, you're only going to destroy the relationships that you have. And I think that that's really important to remember in conflicts, because sometimes we think that, oh, I'm just ranting about my problems. Like I don't want to have like you don't want to have the hard conversation. So instead of talking to the person about it, you talk to somebody else. And then that only stirs up more trouble because you're just adding to the fire. You're including another person in this conflict, and you're not choosing to just let things go or have a conversation with the person who is involved in the situation. You're having a conversation with somebody else about it. And that's bringing in an extra person, but not in a good way. In the Bible, it talks about bringing in a third party if the person that you had the conflict is like they say, bring in a third party if the person that you've had the conflict with isn't really wanting to hear what you have to say. But that's only if that doesn't work out. Like, bring in a third party if they aren't listening. Don't talk to a third party before you even bring it up to the other person. That's just going to an extra person and just gossiping. That's not resolving anything. And I get that sometimes like ranting, like it can be helpful because or at least it can feel helpful. It can feel like you're getting it off your chest, but in reality, ranting usually only pulls you down more unless you're talking about it to God or maybe even like a godly mentor. Like if you're bringing it up to someone who you're like, I'm bringing this up because I want wisdom and insight on how to do this, and you're bringing it up to someone who you know will give you godly wisdom and insight, that's an okay situation. But if you're just bringing it up to like one of your friends just so you can complain about it and get them all like against the other person, or just like bringing it up just to like talk about it and stir up drama, like that's not going to help. And I know I'm definitely someone who's done this before. Like I'm not innocent of this at all by any means. I definitely will talk about other people to other people more than I need to, and it's really bad, and I'm trying to like reel that in and have insight and wisdom to when I can say something and when I really shouldn't, and when I should just keep my mouth shut, keep it to myself and pray about it. And so obviously this is something I'm still working on, but I just wanted to encourage everybody else in that sometimes you don't need to say the thing. Sometimes you may want to talk about the situation or talk about somebody else, but in reality, it's probably not going to get you anywhere, and it's probably only going to make you feel worse about the other person. And then another verse that kind of goes along with that is Proverbs 26:20. Without wood, a fire goes out, and without a gossip, a quarrel dies down. So it's basically saying that if you're not gossiping, like the problem may kind of just go away on its own. And I've seen that so many times in my own life. Like if something like really hard happens between me and another friend. Also, guys, I'm missing a nail. Don't think about that too much. I just thought of it. But anyways, ignore my missing nail. But anyways, sometimes when you have problems, talking about it and ranting about it will only make you feel worse, versus if you just kind of sat and just really prayed about it and just chose to forgive and let things go, then that'll be so much more beneficial for you, because sometimes it's really not a big deal, but overthinking it and talking to somebody else about it and getting them all fired up and ranting about it, that's only going to make you feel worse about it. Versus if you would just, pray about it, you probably would feel better about it and let it go, and it wouldn't even matter to you anymore. And so that's kind of what this verse is just saying. Like a gossip, like without gossip, a quarrel dies down. So like half our problems would probably go away if we just chose to keep them to ourselves and not talk to other people about it. And again, this is something I definitely need to work on because I really like to talk. And so when I'm having a hard day or having troubles with something, I will usually talk to somebody about it, whether it's a friend or like my mom or just somebody that's around that I can talk to about like the things I'm going through. Usually I end up just ranting though, and then I feel worse about it. And then they'll say something and it'll just add to the fire. And yeah, basically sometimes it's okay to just let things go and not talk about it, and it'll go away. Because I know we all talk like it's good to rant. It's good to get things off your chest. And I think to an extent, yes, but also like remember who you're ranting to. Like I think ranting to God is so much different from like ranting to another person. I feel like so many times we think like it's okay to just rant to other people, but in reality, I feel like most of the time, it's really not, and it's really not beneficial. And again, I know I do this so much, and so like don't come at me, but I definitely think that most of our problems would go over a lot better if we just chose to talk to God about it and not other people, because in reality, most people don't have the wisdom that you need in the situation anyway, and only God really does, and only God can bring you that peace in your heart. So that's my hot take, is that literally ranting will get you nowhere, even if you feel like you want to and you need to and it'll help. It probably won't. And maybe for you, that's something you need to set boundaries on. Maybe like you have a friend and you guys can be good accountability for one another, and you guys can remind each other, okay, hey, I can tell you're just kind of ranting right now. I can tell you're just kind of spiraling. Maybe just reflect on the things that are positive about the person that you're ranting about, or are positive about the situation that you're ranting about. And that'll really just kind of help you and like calm you down, and maybe see that there are positives to spin on that situation. And so you can do that on your own. Like you can like take your thoughts, silence them, and like spin them into a more positive light. But then again, it's also going to be really beneficial if you have that accountability from somebody else, because I know so many times, like, I'll have friends that'll come to me and they'll be spiraling, or I'll go to my friends, and if they just remind me, like, hey, like, I know, like, you feel like this situation is like the worst and there's nothing good about it, but if you can just remember that, hey, there are good things, like, think about the good things, and that will really help. And I know sometimes I don't always do this, or my friends don't always do this for me, and then we end up just ranting. And I think that that's something I could even set boundaries in, like talk to some of my friends, be like, hey, like when we see each other just ranting about things that we don't need to be ranting about, maybe let's try to remind each other to think about the good, and to just choose not to bring up that situation, and to choose to just go to the Lord about it. And I think that that would be really beneficial. So that's even something like I can actively do. Like as of right now, like I do have good friendships, that we do have accountability and some of that, but I'm sure that there's more things that I could say, like, hey, let's remind each other to not gossip when we feel like we're just talking about other people, or let's remind each other. And I do think gossip is definitely a big factor in this, because a lot of our conflicts are handled by talking to other people about it and asking for advice from other people on how to handle the situation. But then again, like, not a lot of advice that you will get from other people is actually sound advice, not unless you're talking to someone who you really trust. And I think something to remember is get the least amount of people involved as you can. Like, if they don't need to know, don't tell them. If it's like somebody who's like a mentor, or somebody who you really trust to give you good biblical advice and godly advice, like, yes, tell them. Ask them for advice on how to handle the conflict, because it's not always easy. Sometimes you need other advice and other wisdom on how to handle it. But if it's just someone that you're talking to just because you can and just because you want to, that's not going to be beneficial, because that is only just bringing more and more people into the conflict that don't really need to be in the conflict, if you get what I'm saying. So I think that really is just kind of the first place to start. Just don't bring more people into the situation than really need to be in the situation, and don't gossip about it. Like, just let it be. And then after that, like, you can decide, okay, do I need to bring this up to the person that is involved in the conflict, or do I need to just choose in my own heart to forgive? Is this not a big deal? Is this something I can overlook, or is this something I should address? And I think that there is a lot of discernment that has to come with that. And you can spend a lot of time in prayer over that. And I think that it is important to spend time sitting in that and praying over that, but also don't spend too much time just stewing in it. I think it's one thing to pray about it and dwell on it in prayer, and another thing to just let yourself spiral and think about all the negatives and just stew in your anger. I think it's good for us to think about some of those things. Like, if you're thinking about it in a positive light, like, say I'm thinking about a conflict with somebody, and I'm just over here like, oh my gosh, like, they're just so annoying. I can't believe they would do this. I can't believe that they would say this. Like, it hurt me so much. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And I'm just like over here just thinking all these thoughts over and over again. That's not going to help me. But if I'm thinking of this person and then I decide, okay, but it's probably not a big deal. Okay, they probably didn't know that hurt me. Okay, well, they're a daughter of God too, or they're a son of God too, and God loves them, and God forgives me, so I should forgive them. Because if you choose to just ignore the situation, that's not going to help either, because you're not getting that peace that's resolved in the situation. You have to dwell on it a little bit, but you can't dwell on it negatively. That is like something that I see in my own life and so many other people's lives again and again. They choose to either just ignore the conflict, but it's never really resolved. They never resolve it in their hearts or with the other person. And sometimes you don't have to resolve it with the other person as long as you're at peace with it, as long as you've prayed about it and you feel peace about that situation. But then sometimes you do need to address it with the other person. Be like, hey, this really hurt me. Like, it hurt me that you said that about me. It hurt me that you did that, or that you didn't do this with me. Like, there can be so many different situations. Like, maybe for you, like, you had plans with somebody and they kind of blew you off and that hurt your feelings, or somebody said something negative about you behind your back. Like, there can be so many different situations where this can come into play, but it's important that you come to a point where you're at peace with it. You don't want to spiral about it. You don't want to just ignore it. You want to come to peace. So whether that means just on your own choosing to let it go and to bring it to God and say, hey, it's okay, I forgive this person, this isn't a big deal to me, or go to that person and have that forgiveness and that conversation with them face to face. Whichever path works for you in that situation, just make sure you're getting to a point where you are forgiving and you are at peace. And maybe some situations, the relationship may have to end. You may have to say, okay, well, we had this conflict and they didn't really feel receptive to what I was saying, and it really hurt me, and I know I'm not going to get to a point where I'm forgiving, and then you're just going to sit in that anger. Sometimes it's better to just cut off a relationship than to keep pursuing a relationship where you're going to hold bitterness. Because yes, God does call us to forgive, but if you know that you are going to have a hard time forgiving that person, it is better just to cut off that relationship than keep pursuing that relationship to where you keep sitting in that bitterness and that anger and that unforgiveness. But don't cut off the relationship unless you've had that conversation, because it really could have just been a misunderstanding. Like, I've had so many situations in my life where I've had conflicts and it really was just a misunderstanding. Or I've had situations where I didn't say anything about the conflict, and then it ended up blowing up later because we were both just too angry about it. Like, that was one situation I had with a friend. I think I was probably 14 or 15, and this friend and I, we were really close. We'd been really close for about a year, and we were really good friends. Like, we went to summer camp together, we went to youth group together. Like, it was just a really amazing friendship. But then we kind of had a few things that kind of happened later on where she kind of got irritated with me for things that I did or said, and I was getting irritated by her. I was getting irritated by her with things that she did or said, and we kind of just held on to those things. We didn't bring them up to each other. And then it was probably 3 months into like that time where we were having these conflicts but weren't really talking about them, and we had a phone call, and basically we kind of just like blew up on each other. Like, I said all the things that had irritated me about her for the past like 3 or 4 months, and she said all the things that irritated her about me for the past 3 or 4 months, and it did not go over well. The friendship basically ended because we were both too far in. We were both too mad and bitter and hurt by the things that the other had said that we couldn't let go of it, because we had held on to those things for so long, and we just exploded, and the friendship just ended at that point. Which, for me, I at least have a happy ending to that story, because about a little over a year later, we kind of reconciled and apologized for like all those things and those hardships and that hurt, and we're actually really good friends. Like, she's one of my closest friends again now, and it's been a really good blessing to see that conflict get resolved, even if it was over a year of time. Like, sometimes that friendship will just die and it won't come back, but for me, I was able to see the blessing of that even though it took a year, we were both able to forgive each other, and we were both able to see God work in each other's lives over that season. And now we're really close again. And it's been really amazing just to see God grow in her. And at some point she'll be on this podcast. So that'll be really cool. But we did really struggle, and we had a really bad falling out because we held on to our bitterness and to those conflicts, and we didn't bring them to each other. And so that's why I want to encourage everybody, like, hey, you do want to address these conflicts, but you want to address them as they come, and you want to address them in a peaceful and biblical way. We did not handle the conflict in a biblical way, I can tell you that, because I just kind of exploded on her and she exploded on me, and we basically just complained about everything the other one did. We didn't come to it in a peaceful way saying, hey, like, this could have been a misunderstanding, but like, this hurt me, and bring it to them in a peaceful way. Don't yell. Don't come at them like you're attacking. Like, bring it to them like you have an open mind. Go and actually do come to them with an open mind. Don't just be so closed-minded that you can't hear what they have to say, because there might be things that you really didn't interpret correctly in that conflict or in that conversation. And I've seen that happen in other situations. Like, I had a situation actually really recently. It was probably like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago. One of my friends, like, I thought that we had a conversation about something, but we both kind of came to a mutual agreement about something. And then later on, it was like a week later from when we had that conversation, and she ended up kind of going against what we had agreed upon. And I was just kind of like, wait, what? Like, why would she do that? Like, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't something that I was so mad. I was like, how dare she do that? It was kind of like I was more hurt that she purposefully kind of went against what we had agreed upon. And so I was just kind of like, why would she do that? Why would she go against like what we kind of had established together? Like, that hurt me. I was like, we had a conversation about this and she completely disregarded that. So for a while I was just kind of sitting in that, and I was definitely stewing in my anger. I was like, I can't believe she would do this. I can't believe she would say that. Like, that, it just really irritated me. But I ended up deciding, I was like, hey, I've had enough situations in the past where I haven't addressed conflicts, and I know how those end. I don't want to lose this friendship over something that's not a big deal because I didn't address the conflict. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to bring it up to her and tell her like how that hurt me. And I did. I brought it up to her, and she ended up feeling really bad. She was like, I completely forgot about that conversation. She's like, I never purposefully would have gone behind your back and done that or said that, because like, she had just completely forgotten about that conversation. And so she didn't purposefully try to hurt me. And again, like, the thing that she actually like did, it was not a big deal. It really wasn't. Like, the only thing that hurt me about it was the fact that she did it despite the fact we'd had a conversation about not doing it. And then when I found out that she just forgot about the conversation and she didn't actually mean to do that, like, she said, like, she never would have intended to hurt me like that or done something to go against what I said. And that we ended up really being able to resolve that and talk about that. And it ended up being a good blessing for our friendship. And we just decided like we would continue like in the future, like if we had conflicts like this, we would bring them up because we were able to resolve it. And I felt like we became so much closer after that because we realized like, hey, like, it was just a misunderstanding. It's not a big deal. Like, our friendship is deeper than that. And I saw so much blessing from addressing the conflict versus like if I hadn't brought it up to her, I probably still would just be sitting in my anger about it. Like, I probably would have chosen just to overlook it and ignore it, but I probably still like would have had a little bit of a bitterness towards that, even if it was like subconsciously or just in the back of my mind. Like, if she had done something else to hurt me, I probably would have it would have reminded me of that, and I would have just held on to that, and then I would have exploded on her, and then who knows what would have happened to that friendship, you know? I see, like, I addressed the conflict, and then I realized like it wasn't even a big deal. It was just a misunderstanding. And so that's why I encourage people so much to just address the conflicts as they come up, but address them in a peaceful way. Be like, hey, like, this hurt me. I don't know if you meant it like that, but I just wanted to let you know. Like, don't attack, and don't don't come in with a closed mind. Be open to what other people have to say and be receptive. Because if I had just come in with a closed mind, like I wouldn't have even been receptive to her saying that it was a misunderstanding, because I would have just taken that and twisted it and been like, okay, well, she's lying. She's not telling the truth. Like, you have to be open to hear what the other people have to say, because that's how conflicts are resolved. And you never know, like that sometimes conflicts that you feel like are hard in the moment can end up being a blessing later. Like that conflict I was just talking about with my friend. Like, I've seen how it was a blessing in our friendship, and I've also seen how it's a blessing because I'm able to share it with you guys now. Like, I asked her, like, hey, is this something I could share on the podcast? Like, let other people know, like, this is what happens when you handle conflict in a godly way. And she was like, yeah, totally. Like, I would love to have that situation be a blessing to other people. And so that's been really, really cool too. Like, even like it was our conflict and we learned from that. But now, like, other people could learn from this conflict, and then other people can see an example of, like, hey, like, that's a way that conflict was handled and it was resolved in a positive way. And then they can maybe apply that to their lives. Now, I have a few more verses I do want to share. I've got Romans 12:19. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. And this doesn't really have a whole lot to do with conflicts, but I do just want to remind you, like, it's not even our job to take revenge. Sometimes it's something we really do just need to let go. Like, we aren't the ones that are supposed to avenge and take wrath on other people when they do something that hurts us. That's God's job. Our job is to forgive and to move on and to let things go. God will handle the other person in the situation how he sees fit and how he sees it should be. So if you bring up a conflict to someone and you try to handle it in a godly way, but they aren't receptive to that, don't just go, like, cursing them and, like, saying all terrible things about them to other people and, like, trying to take revenge and being like, okay, I'm gonna go TP their house now. Like, no, that's not your job to take revenge. It's God's. He will bring the judgment that he sees fit. They will have their own natural consequences for that, whether they just lost a really good friend, like they lost your relationship, or maybe it's in other ways. But all to say, it's God's responsibility to decide when somebody has to have a consequence for something, and it's not our own. We should not be the ones to decide when to take revenge. And then I have Ephesians 4:29 through 32. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as in Christ God forgave you. So that was kind of a long verse, so I'm going to circle back kind of to the beginning. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but what only is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And so just that first part, I just kind of want to say, like, in the context of that, they may not have been necessarily referring to having conflicts. They could have been referring to just bringing others down in the way that they talk. But I do think it can also be applied to the same situation with conflicts, because if you're just kind of coming at someone and attacking them, that's not going to help them. That's only going to tear them down, and they're not going to want to rebuild that connection. If you attack someone, they're just going to get defensive. But if you come at someone with a sense of peace and a desire to be in a reconciled relationship, then they're going to return with peace as well, because they will want to reconcile a relationship if you come with peace. And then the next part, it says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling, and slander, along with every form of malice. Like, he's saying get rid of anger and that bitterness. Like, if you're just holding on to these negative feelings and emotions, that's not going to get you anywhere. God wants us to let go and to forgive and to seek peace. And then he goes on just to say, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgive each other, just as Christ, God, forgave you. He wants us to forgive one another, and he forgave us. Like, we've done so many terrible things, like we've sinned so many times, and yet God still forgives us. So shouldn't we forgive others? We wouldn't want God to hold on to bitterness with us, and so we shouldn't hold on to bitterness towards others, because that's not fair. We can't expect other people to forgive us and for God to forgive us if we're not going to choose to forgive the other people around us. And you have to truly forgive them. If you address the conflict and they're receptive to what you have to say and they apologize and you say that you'll forgive them, you truly have to forgive them. You can't just continue to hold on to that bitterness and, bring that back up as soon as you're irritated again. You have to really let it go and choose to forgive them for that thing. And then there's other situations where maybe they don't feel bad and you do have to cut out that relationship. You still need to forgive them because you might just continue to just walk in that bitterness. Even if they don't ask for forgiveness, it's still our job to choose to forgive them and to be the person that forgives. Now, I do just want to bring up 3 main don'ts I have when it comes to handling conflict. So for my first don't, I have don't gossip. Obviously, I've been saying that the entire episode. Do not gossip because that's not going to help the situation. You can bring in good godly advice and godly counsel. That is okay because sometimes you need that. Sometimes you don't know how to address the situation and you need help and you need that advice. But most of the time, you don't need as many people in the situation as you bring into the situation. Keep people on a need-to-know basis. If they don't need to know, if they're not someone that you need the advice from, or they're not somebody that is already directly involved, then maybe don't tell them and don't involve them. If there's someone that you want godly advice from and you know they will give you godly advice, then you can let them know. And maybe there's multiple people in your life that will give you good godly advice and wisdom, but do you need to tell all of them about the situation? No, because that's just going to keep the conflict going by keep bringing it up to people. If you keep people on a need-to-know basis, okay, who do I need to tell that will give me advice on how to handle this situation, and who is just someone extra that I just am gossiping to? You have to keep that in mind. Am I just saying this to gossip, or am I saying this because it really is going to benefit me and it really is going to help? Now, for my second don't, I have don't wait. Don't wait to address the conflict and you end up just stirring and stewing in your anger. Don't wait to address the conflict, whether that's with the person or just with yourself. Sometimes you don't need to address the conflict to people, but you do need to address it to yourself. You need to think about forgiving them and choosing to let go of the things in your heart, because if you hold on to it, that's not going to help. You're only going to end up sitting in that anger. But then other times you do need to bring it up to that person, and you need to forgive them when you bring it up to them. You can't just continue to hold on to it. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. You don't want to just right away, 2 hours later, just address the conflict, but you haven't really thought about it. I'm not talking about situations like that. You don't want to just come in and not have a plan of what you're going to say or how you're going to handle the situation. You want to give yourself time to be prepared, but don't wait too long. Don't just avoid the conflict. Still address it and bring it up, whether that's with the person or just with yourself. Now, for my third don't, I have don't attack. If you just come at somebody, guns blazing, ready to just shoot them down and burn the house down, that's not going to help. That's only going to cause more problems, and they're just going to be defensive, and they're not even going to be receptive to what you have to say. You have to handle it with peace, because even just logically, it's not smart just to come at someone attacking, because like I said, they aren't going to be receptive to what you have to say if you are attacking. And so it's just not a good idea, because then they're not even going to hear what you're trying to say, and then there's no point. So not only is it just not a good godly thing to just come at someone and attack them, but it's also not even smart logically to handle a situation like that. You have to handle situations with peace. Enter the conflict, bring it up in a peaceful way with a peaceful tone. Explain it to them and explain why you're hurt peacefully and end the conflict peacefully. Like whether they end up apologizing or not, it does not matter because you need to exit with peace. Even if the conflict wasn't resolved, you can resolve it on your own. You can choose to bring peace. And if you have to walk away from them in a friendship or in a relationship, leave it with peace. Don't, slander their name and start saying every bad thing that they've ever done, telling the whole world. Because again, that's bringing it right back to the gossiping. It's not going to benefit you and it's not going to benefit them. So you have to handle it with peace. And this is something that only can come from God. Only God can give you the peace you need to handle a conflict accurately. And so you'll have to pray, okay, God, give me the peace to handle this right. Give me the words to say to handle this situation. Give me the wisdom and what to say and the discernment, and give me peace through it and after it. Whether or not they feel remorseful, you have to have peace throughout the whole situation, and this is the peace from God. So those are my 3 main don'ts. Don't gossip, don't wait, and don't attack. And obviously, these aren't the only standards or rules for conflict. And obviously, there's so many more things I could say don't do when it comes to conflict. But these are just a few main ones that I thought of that I felt like I should share on this episode. I do have another don't, but this is more of just a reminder that if you're handling conflicts with another Christian, it'll be completely different than when you're handling them with someone who is not a believer. So if they're not a believer, don't expect the same standards from them. Don't expect them to go about the conflict the same way that you would. Don't expect them to live a way that you would. Because sometimes the conflict is just you confronting them on maybe a sin that they struggle with. Well, if they're not a Christian, you can't confront them about a sin because they don't have the convictions. You can't confront someone about a sin if they aren't a believer. If they're a believer, then they should be living a way that is pure and righteous and godly. And so then you can bring up to them maybe something that you've noticed in their life. Be like, hey, I've noticed that you struggle with this sin. And then you can bring it up to them in a godly way, again, with peace. But if they're not a believer, you can't address that because they aren't going to feel convicted by that, and that isn't something that's our job to convict them of unless they have God in them. And I know I'm not covering everything when it comes to conflicts, and there's so many different kinds of conflicts because you can have conflicts in the workplace or with your friends or with, family members or extended family, and there's so many different situations. I can't touch on everything, and it really is something that everybody just kind of has to work through on their own and with the help of God. If you're ever in doubt of what to do, just pray to God because He's the one that will give you the answers and the peace that you need. But there are so many other resources for this. There are lots of books. There's other podcasts that talk about this. And if you need other advice on how to handle conflicts, it is okay to go to other people. I know I keep saying don't gossip and don't bring anybody into the situation that isn't necessary, but I don't want you to be afraid to ask for advice and to seek help because it is okay, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow is by asking people that we trust. But one book, I haven't actually read this book yet, but I really want to read it. It's called The Better Friend by Grace Valentine. And I think it looks like a really good book. It's about becoming a better friend. And I know she definitely addresses things like conflict in that. And so I think that would be a really good book to read if you want more resources on how to handle conflict, especially when it comes to friendships. And she also has her own podcast too, where she talks about different things like conflict in that as well. So if you need other resources, I would definitely check that out. And before I close, I do want to end with just one final verse, and this is Proverbs 10:12. There are so many good proverbs when it comes to conflict. When I was scrolling through verses and trying to find verses to share in this podcast, there was probably at least 20 that were in Proverbs that came up, and I just kind of picked some good ones and some highlights. But if you ever need to look up verses on conflict, just check Proverbs because there's so many good ones in there. But this one says, hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers all wrongs. And I feel like that's just a good way to kind of wrap it all up. If you're living in hatred and, negative feelings, anger and bitterness, like that's only going to stir up your bitterness and the bitterness towards others and anger. And it's only going to build. It's not going to release. And so if you're living in that bitterness, it's only going to breed more bitterness. But love covers all wrongs. If you're choosing to love someone, your heart will automatically be softened and you will choose to forgive them. And so when you're in a conflict or you're feeling frustrated, just choose to love them through it. Choose peace, choose joy, and let go of all of those negative feelings like bitterness and anger. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I really hope that this episode has encouraged you and you feel like you have more insight on how to address conflicts from this. I know this is something, again, that is going to be a process. It's not going to be easy, and every time you handle conflict, it's going to be hard. This isn't just like an easy fix that once you handle conflict right one time, it's automatically going to be easy every other time because every situation is different. But I hope this has been an encouragement to you on how to handle conflict. And whether you're someone who likes to just attack conflict and come at it, or you're someone who's a little bit more easygoing and finds it hard to address conflict, I just pray that you will be able to seek God through that and that you will have discernment on when you need to push yourself to share and you need to share your feelings and address that conflict, or when you need to back off and say, okay, I need to come at this situation with peace. I just will pray that you will be able to have discernment in that and that you will find wisdom. Now, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Living Life for Real podcast. Remember just to go out and live your life to its utmost for Jesus.